thank you very much for coming to this event. I'm the CEO of the SBI R3 Japan, just established last month. But we are going to start our business today. It's not April Fool, it's real. And the SBI R3 Japan is, as the name tells, the joint venture company between SBI Holdings and R3. As you know who SBI is, and I believe you know who R3 is, so I'm not going to explain who they are. So today's event is a fire chat between the two CTOs. I'd like to introduce Richard General Brown, CTO of R3, and also the Fernando Vasquez-Caro, CTO of SBI R3 Japan. Please come to the podium. Okay, I will be facilitating. Oh, my voice becomes very loud. Is it loud? Is it okay? All right, thank you. So I will be facilitating today's Fireside chat, and let's start introduction of yourselves, starting from Richard, please, and plus some of the view from R3. Who SBI is, what is the view to SBI, and then next to the Richard, Fernando, introduce yourself and your view of R3, please.
Hello everybody, so yes, I'm Richard Brown, I'm Chief Technology Officer at R3. Fujimoto, thank you for hosting this. This is a fantastic turnout, a fantastic event, and it's so great to see so many of you. So as I say, I lead the engineering team at R3. I'll talk a bit later about what we do, the Corda open source blockchain software we're building, and also the journey we've been on, so how we're a software company now, but we didn't begin as a software company. I think it's quite an interesting journey, and gave us a unique perspective on what the software needs to do, and we'll drill into that in a little bit more time. But as Fujimoto said, it would be interesting if we spoke about each other rather than ourselves. So what's SBI to me, and why am I looking forward so much to this joint venture? And I guess to understand that, we need to go back a few years in R3's history, when SBI were one of our members who advised us through our steering committee, which is how I got to know Fernando, it's also how I got to know Fujimoto. And through every month having these meetings where we were presenting what we were doing, and our steering committee with senior people from all our members who were advising us, I began to know and increasingly respect and exceedingly value the advice I was getting from Fujimoto and the team. They helped us design Corda, show us what it needed to be, and subsequently became a very large shareholder in R3, and an extremely innovative driving force in Japan in helping take Corda forward, make it adoptable and adopted in Japan, and helping move us forward. And now, as we're moving from experimentation and early development into real deployment of blockchain software, having a partner, which is what our joint venture is, to help people build Corda applications and deploy applications with a deeply technical team led by Fernando on the ground, it will be unstoppable. So I'm really looking forward to what the next few years brings.
So my name is Fernando. I'm the Chief Technical Officer of SBI R3. But for disclosure, I'm also the CEO of other SBI group company called SBI Security Solutions, right? So I'm a business guy too. In my previous life, I used to be, a core kernel developer. I moved to the dark side, so now I do business too. And that said, right, I'm one of the persons, along with Fujimoto-san, and driving blockchain initiatives within the SBI group. And finally, we've seen actual demand for, blockchain-based solutions. And that's the case with, especially, as the CEO of this other, group company, and what I need or what I would request from such a platform, right, is something that is enterprise ready. And sorry for using that word enterprise, but that's something that as a businessman I really care about. And within that market in Japan, and it's also looking for, such a solution. And after looking, in the market and testing many other platforms, right, it was clear to me that R3 Corda was the right solution. That's when Fujimoto told me about this chance of, setting up a JV here in Japan with R3 and also become the CTO, so I get to do some techie stuff again. I said, yeah, hell yeah, let's go for it. So that's why we are here. So thank you, Fujimoto-san.
Well, Fernando is recently stuck with the personnel matters, so I'm very happy to hear that he is coming back to the real work. So, anyway, well, that's inside the joke, sorry. So I'd like to know that what your accomplishments so far in the blockchain DLT realm. So starting from Richard.
So if I think back to, I guess we're into April now, so we are a quarter of the way into 2019. But if I look back at 2018, I think the thing I'm probably, I guess, happiest with or proudest about was seeing how Corda moved from being a platform created by financial institutions for financial institutions, seeing how it evolved from that to being a platform that is being used by multiple industries. It was the reason I say this, I count this as a success, is because it wasn't our original intention. We started developing Corda in 2015 and spent most of 2016 working with our members, all these senior technologists from large financial institutions. We spent all this time in 2016 really understanding what we thought the opportunity for blockchain was in financial services. What is the opportunity? What problems could we solve with it? And we concluded, what I think everybody now agrees, is that the opportunity is to help bring systems into perfect consensus, so that I know that what I see is what you see. I'm running an application, I'm trading with you, I'm transacting with you, you're running an application, and we know for sure that we're seeing the same thing. No longer do we have inconsistent information, no longer is it too difficult to execute our businesses because we're out of sync. So the opportunity was to help entire markets optimize themselves, whether it's syndicated lending or aspects of trade finance, anything that can help entire industries work more efficiently was the opportunity. But we spent all our time focusing on financial services requirements, and we discovered from them what Corda needed to look like. And we concluded that existing platforms would not be appropriate, so we started the journey to build Corda, and we'll talk a bit later about what makes it different. But what we realized was, for it to be successful, it had to be open source. People needed to be able to see how it worked, but also they needed to be sure that as many people as possible would also adopt it. So we made Corda open source. And then what we discovered, and it was a really happy moment, it was a very serendipitous moment, and what we discovered was people from outside financial services had discovered it, and they discovered that it was useful for their business problems too. So first in insurance, and now Corda is the dominant platform for blockchain in insurance, but in healthcare, government, oil and gas, all these other industries started discovering Corda and started using it. So in answer to your question, what was the biggest success, if you like, of 2018? It was really this realization that because we had what we then realized was a very general purpose design, we had a design that appeals to multiple industries. We discovered that Corda is now in this happy position that it's one of the world's top 3 open source blockchain platforms, alongside some of the enterprise Ethereum variants and Hyperledger Fabric. So that was it was just really nice to see how the work we've done in the early years to understand the requirements had been discovered and adopted by so many other people in 2018.
Thank you, Richard. Well, let me supplement a bit. When I was appointed as head of the blockchain in SBI, that's at the beginning of 2016. To be honest, I have no idea what it is. So I learned a lot, and after I read the white paper, Corda white paper, that's amazing, because it starts from the business issue. Other white paper are primarily starting from the technology issues, but R3 Corda white paper is different. They start from business issue and apply blockchain DLT to resolve the business issue. So that's quite unique among other blockchain startups. And we joined at that point in time, it's called R3, that is a Lab and Research Center that R3 has been running. And we actually run the experiments by using XRP Ledger, Hyperledger Fabric. So we experimented a lot of things. And that's nearly little less than 3 years ago. At that point in time, no one was sure if blockchain DLT is real. So in my view, the great accomplishment that Richard and his folks made is that it's real now, right? So that's a great accomplishment. Sorry for specific comment.
No, thank you, and it's a good point. People are now live on this software that it's a really good, I guess like any engineer, it's great when people are using the things you built. And this, as you say, these ideas we had in 15 and 16 white paper and experiments, people are now live transacting real business on this. So yeah, it's great to see.
Yeah, so I would like to provide an end user perspective. So last year, 2018, under JPX, Tokyo Stock Exchange umbrella, and in partnership with many other brokers, not only SBI's own broker, SBI SEC, we basically did a POC where we developed a blockchain-based, or the goal was to develop blockchain-based KYC, know your customer, and AML, anti-money laundering solution, right? And we tried several solutions, right? All the usual suspects, right? Fabric, Ethereum, and of course, since we also had an investment in R3, we also evaluated Corda, right? And it was pretty clear to me that Corda was the right solution for us. And the reason for that is that when it comes to things like the compliance requirements, right? The fact that not everyone should be allowed to see data that's not relevant to them, things like that, even if it's encrypted. So it was mainly these kind of non-functional requirements, right, that basically made it clear to me that Corda was basically the right solution for our problem, right? It's not a solution looking for a problem, right? Because let's be honest, right? You don't need blockchain to implement or develop a KYC solution. There are plenty of them that are not using blockchain, right? They've been around for decades, right? So, but the thing about the Corda is that basically it has the right, what I call the trust model, and it also provides, basically you get all the non-functional requirements that you need for free. Let's say you need authentication of all the nodes in the network. You get that, right? Let's say you want to make sure that the history of all the transactions, but it's not easily tampered with. You get that for free. It's UTXO based, right? So basically, for our developers, it was really easy to implement such a solution using Corda, because basically you got many other things that we needed without much effort, right? And when it came to the all the compliance and legal requirements, right? They can get quite convoluted. Basically, Corda offered that kind of flexibility, right? And so we did a POC, and the next step was to basically try to productize that. So we are actually doing that at the moment. We are partnering with a certain big Japanese system integrator. I cannot share the name at the moment, but it's going pretty well. But she also mentioned that back in the day when we finished that POC, we were not happy with some things about Corda. There were some, what I call before enterprise features that were not there. Things like high availability, right, and being able to use web enterprise database like one. It might sound, maybe you're sound picky, right? But that's something that the guys signing the checks really care about, right? And when things break, we need to have someone we can blame, right? As clients. So that's what kind of good news to me within the soon to be released Corda 4. You will see all these enterprise features that many of your bosses will ask for or might require. fire, right? So for me, that's as an end user, right? That's a really huge development, and I'm looking forward to see what happens, right? Now I'm happy it's really enterprise ready, flavor of Corda.
Alright. Thank you. So let me move on to the main event of today's Fireside chat. I'm going to ask some maybe easy questions to use. But before that, announcement. 前の方に席空いている、向こう側に空いている席がもし立ってらっしゃる方いたらそっちに座っていただいても大丈夫ですよ。こっちはなんかもうぎゅうぎゅうみたいなんで。Sorry, I'm just announcing that there are vacant seats, so someone standing behind, please have a seat. Okay, the first question is that will blockchain DLT disrupt existing technology? What is your view?
Will blockchain technology disrupt existing technology? Well, that's an interesting question because I often get asked, will blockchain technology disrupt existing business models or existing businesses? But will it disrupt existing technology is an interesting one. I'm not sure because as Fujimoto-san says, right at the beginning of the design work for Corda, we started with some business problems. And because back then we were focused on finance, we asked ourselves, if we wanted to massively improve how equities are processed, how would we do it? If we wanted to massively improve how cash is managed, how would we do it? And a few other what we called architecturally significant use cases. So problems in the market that we knew were real problems and which were not currently being solved. And we asked ourselves, what would a platform based on decentralized principles, what would a platform that gets deployed by all participants in the market, what would it need to look like to help solve these problems? And many of the requirements are ones that Fernando has just mentioned. You also need things like the platform has to be scalable, it has to be easy to write the applications, it's why you write applications in Corda using Java, you need good integration, you need to make sure you have reliability and performance and all the rest. But there's always a second point you have to remember though, which is if you've got a problem such as the problem of inefficiency in the syndicated lending market, which is a problem one of our partners are working on, if you have a problem that you think could be fixed, if you could fix it with existing technology, it will almost always be cheaper and more efficient and lower risk to do it with existing technology. New technology is slightly more expensive, there are fewer people who know it, it's riskier because it's newer. So the perhaps like unexpected answer is the solutions I see people building with Corda for optimizing the syndicated lending market, transforming some aspects of trade finance, improving how some healthcare records are managed. The reason they're using Corda is because one, they're big problems, but two, it simply wouldn't be possible or it would be too hard to solve it using existing technology. In other words, these are problems that we couldn't easily solve until this technology came along. So for that reason, I don't think that Corda or DLT will disrupt existing technology. Instead, I believe it's allowing us to solve problems that existing technology can't easily address. So it's actually allowing us to solve new problems in business, is my belief.
Well, since my question was slightly not appropriate. so actually, you mentioned very good point. In the past, people are asking technology questions. So we had very hard time explaining what blockchain, what DLT is. But now we do not really receive such questions. And this is a really good sign. People start asking business-related questions. If this is applicable. That's kind of, is this use case suitable for the DLT blockchain or not? That's very good sign. Blockchain DLT is not suitable for every single use cases. We have to carefully choose what use case is appropriate. So that is the right question we have to ask, right? So sorry, it's not just technology, it's a business use case. It's important.
So adding to that, right, and like you said, sometimes blockchain or Corda is the right solution for a particular use case, right? But what I see when I try to sell blockchain-based solutions to clients, right, is what I call the governance problem, right, and the application ownership problem, okay, because you have this really nice, cool, and buzzword compliant, blockchain solution, right? It has to be managed by someone, right? So let's say this a public cloud, right? And you see, miners fighting with each other, and there's a fork, and everything gets messed up, right? That doesn't inspire confidence, right? So that's something that when we try to sell blockchain and this layer-based solution, right? We should always keep in mind what's the governance model. Does that model inspire confidence or not, right? And then you have the dApps, this application running on top. Okay, who's the owner of that service or that application, right? What happens when something breaks? Who's liable? Who goes to jail? Who's gonna, who you can yell at? Who's gonna take the call when you need help, like on a Saturday night, 3 a.m., right? And that's something that it might sound kind of boring, but boring makes money. And honestly, unless we are able to answer those questions, right, I don't see, Corda or any other blockchain-based solution, right, making any inroads in sorry again for using the same word, enterprise space, right, which is kind of our target, right? So, what do you think, Richard? Maybe just.
I'd agree with that. I mean, I say this to my engineering team. I remind them that already Corda is being used to transact real business. But if we are as successful as we hope we are, Corda will be used to transact billions, if not trillions of dollars in the future. And if something goes wrong, we have to be able to answer the question, where is the transaction? What happened? What do we do? So when we think about these applications, it is more complex in some ways than the current state, because the application is being deployed by all participants in the market. It's a distributed system. And the different people may upgrade at different times. So we've done a lot of thinking about this. So we, from a, I guess if you like, an architecture perspective, we think about different roles. So from a governance and architecture perspective, so there are the operators of nodes, people who are transacting business. So for them, we need to make sure they're running the latest version, that they're running the enterprise version of the software, so it's properly backed up and highly available. We then have the role of the business network operator, who is somebody whose job it is to look across the network of businesses. So this might be this is often the company who's written the application. So they've written the application and they've brought everybody together. And then there's a technical role, which is the technical role, which is the organisation that manages the network, the identity layer that Fernando talked about, consensus, governance, and access control. And for that latter piece, we recently set up something we call the Corda Network Foundation. So that's such a critically important piece of infrastructure, it shouldn't be controlled by any one organisation. So R3 set it up, but we've just established a governance board which has representation of majority voting representation from other parties in the Corda ecosystem who are not R3. So that we make sure that network is well run. You have the business network operators who have a strong incentive to make sure their applications work, and then you have the individual node operators, and then a clear line of attack, so that if something goes wrong with a node, there's internal teams who know how to resolve it. If they can't, they call up the business network operator. If they can't, they call up the network foundation. Because these are complicated distributed systems, and we have to plan not for success, we have to plan for the times when things go wrong, and how we will resolve it. So I agree, it's a critically important.
Just to add to that, like in the last two, blockchain project I was involved with, basically, I spent like significant amount of time just talking to the lawyers, because we needed to come up with a proper legal framework, right, that would make clear who's liable for what. Again, it's boring, but I think that's going to be critical and something that we need to keep in mind going forward.
Yes. There's also one other point, which is what I'm finding is these applications are being delivered in stages. So if I just take one example, because I've been quite abstract until now. So let's give a concrete example. I talked about the syndicated lending market, I didn't know anything about this market before I joined R3, and you can describe it without blockchain. I mean, it runs today without blockchain. You know, if a company needs to borrow a large amount of money, no one bank will lend them all the money. It's too risky. So instead, they go to a bank who helps them find several firms who will together lend them the money, a syndicate. And then they lend the money, and then that loan gets managed over time, make sure the interest payments get sent to the right people, what happens if the borrower defaults, and all the rest of it. This is an inherently decentralized market. A borrower can go to any of a number of agent banks who help them pull together the money. The agent banks can go to any of thousands of lenders. So there's no one in control. There's no CEO of the syndicated lending market. And as a result, there's no one to force change or mandate standards. There are millions, literally millions of faxes still sent every year by this industry, faxes, emails, telephone calls, to automate this process. A FinTech, a financial services software firm called Finastra has built a solution called LenderCom on Corda that is rolling out from last year into this year, that allows communication to flow very efficiently between the borrowers and the lenders in a decentralized manner. The data goes exactly to those who need to have it and nobody else, and the information flows far more freely. But for many of the reasons that Fernando just discovered, phase one is actually quite modest. It's still extremely valuable to the participants because it reduces errors and reduces cost. But phase one is just about moving information around. You know, what has happened to the loan, who owns it, has the payment been made? It's not actually processing the payments, it's not actually doing the transactions. So the first phase is valuable because of the low bar that currently exists in the market, but actually it's also an extraordinarily valuable place where the entire market can learn how to operate one of these networks. You can learn where can errors happen. Let's practice dealing with outages or alerts before phase two and phase three that moves to an entirely new market for the secondary trading of loans. So doing it in lower risk steps is also critical.
Well, let me supplement a bit of technology aspect of what you guys are saying. Does everyone knows the term recording contract? That's, I believe, I'm not quite sure if it's well accepted terms. That's actually used together with the term smart contract. So many people say that the R3 Corda is the platform which can run smart contract. But literally, smart contract in narrow term means Corda is raw, that kind of stuff. As Fernando mentioned, Corda start from different view. So we do recommend all of the users of the Corda to attach legal clause. So if code is wrong, we always come back to the legal clause. That is what regulator want to see. We cannot just say code is wrong. That's wrong in business area. It's okay in the public chain area. But what we believe that we have to resolve business issues, that's where we come from. So we always care the legal soundness. So we don't say that we never have any bugs. We do. That's always true. So we don't say code is wrong, but we always attach legal clause to the code transaction so that we can come back if something happens.
So let me put a geeky perspective too. So I think this is a feature of Corda that started from the whole discussion started with what's the name? Privacy requirements, right? Because you have all these nodes running, taking all these transactions, right? And sometimes you don't want the owner of the node to actually be able to see the contents of the transaction itself. So how do you do that, right? So the Corda guys came up with this brilliant idea of running or doing all these, these some transaction validations using enclaves, hardware enclaves, right? And actually, Intel these days have what is called a SGX feature that basically allows you to do that, right? You can have a traditional or one fairly new, has to be fairly new, I think, Intel server, right? That has this SGX feature, whereby you can run basically any code you want inside that enclave, and not even the owner of the server itself knows what's going on, right? And the challenge there is that, Corda is based on a Java VM, right? Use Kotlin, but it's basically a Java VM that you have running all your code. So what it is basically port a Java VM so that you can run it inside an SGX enclave, which is really cool, if you ask me, right? So, and I wish I could be working on that myself. But I think that's something that is in the works and will be part of some kind of stable release soon. Is that the case?
Yeah, that's right. So this Intel SGX technology, it's kind of a bit mind-bending because as Fernando says, it kind of does the opposite to what you expect a computer normally to do. Normally you have a computer that you own and you expect it to do what you tell it. It's your computer, it belongs to you, and it's your slave. But in a blockchain, you have this weird situation where people send you a transaction, and the way you know it's correct is by checking its history and checking that all the previous steps have been correctly performed. So you have this strange situation where the only thing you trust is your own computer, so you want your computer to run all those checks. But the other person doesn't want to send you all the information because there may be a secret in there they don't want you to know. But if your computer can prove to them that it won't tell you, the owner, anything other than the answer, yes, it's correct, then maybe they will be willing to send that information to you. And that's what this enclave technology allows you to do. Now, it takes a long time to get this integrated fully into the platform. So what we did was we planned to release it in stages, just like in the syndicated lending example, I guess. And last month we released what we called as a developer preview of the ability to write Java code that can run inside one of these enclaves, and then for the rest of the year we'll integrate it into Corda. Now that's important because if you think about what it would take to move blockchain into the mainstream, it has to be usable by real-world developers. If the only people who can write this code are experts with 3 PhDs who are the cleverest people in the world, how do you scale that? How does every company begin to use this? You need to be able to write these applications in modern languages that people understand, like Java. There are 12 million Java developers in the world. So we realized for this vision to work, you had to be able to write Java applications, Corda applications in Java, and then run those applications inside these enclaves. So we spent a lot of time getting a Java virtual machine that can run inside Intel SGX, and we open sourced that work last month, and that's available for anyone to download. So it's pretty much a standalone project that other people might want to build on, but we're pretty pleased with it. And maybe just to follow up on Fujimoto-san's comment as well, that we know this is a complex space and we know it will take time to get everything right. So just to re-emphasize that point, we have a very strong philosophical view that code is not law. If I've entered into a contract with you, the contract is written in English language or Japanese language. It's written on paper, usually with lots and lots of pages and lots of conditions. What we try to automate on Corda is just those pieces of the contract that are well specified and are executed regularly so that we can specify them well. But in the event of dispute or in the event of something unusual that is not easily automatable, the expectation is you pause and go back to the legal contract. So we don't try and replace law, we try and work with existing law, because I think to try and write everything in code is just too hard. Any one of you who's met a lawyer, maybe there are lawyers in this room, lawyers delight in creative ambiguity. Contracts are always ambiguous, they're always negotiated. You simply can't convert some contracts into computer code because there's no ambiguity in computer code, and yet you have to I guess, respect and reflect that, I guess.
Let me do some more geeky talk and go back to the SGX team. Just to let you know that you don't need to be an SGX expert, right, to be able to leverage that kind of feature, right? Actually, there are 3 guys, they work on a really nice framework that allows you to send, the code that you want to run in each of the, basically SGX nodes, right, using remote attestation features provided by, Intel hardware.
Yeah. So
what is running where, and you are sure that all GX can authenticate with each other, right? And you get that for free, right? And so I think it's kind of the cool part, right? So that during the PhD, right, to be able to run, it's a Mamoru code I can write within any client. So it's really cool. So.
Well, you already answered what to my next question. That's really the burning question. In the enterprise blockchain DLT world, there are three major products. Of course, famous IBM Hyperledger Fabric and famous enterprise Ethereum or Quorum and Corda. So, what do you think the differences between those three platforms?
So I wrote a blog post 2 months ago about some problems I saw in Ethereum, and the Ethereum community got very, very angry with me, so I'm going to try and I'll try and be more careful today. So I guess my first comment is it's a real source of satisfaction and pride to my team that people now say the three major general purpose blockchain platforms are the enterprise Ethereum variants, Hyperledger Fabric and Corda, because we're a small team, we're a small startup, and to be in a category of three is a really good feeling, and I think a lot of it is due to all the hard work we did, but all the advice we gained from the people on this stage and elsewhere in the early stages of designing it. And that did give us an advantage because that helped us design it in a very specific way. So if I look at I'll say some positive things about Corda, and then I'll contrast it with the other two platforms. So with Corda, we wanted the world's developers to be able to write applications easily. So that's why you can write in any of the Java languages. You have to be able to integrate with existing systems. So Corda stores its data in a regular relational database. It uses regular message queues to move data in and out. You can't send all the data to everybody. That would be a breach of privacy. That seems obvious now, but when we said that 3 years ago, people thought we were mad because all blockchains broadcast all data to everybody, or some people thought. And we took a very different approach where messages get moved point to point just to where people have a need to know. So there were some very different changes, very different decisions we made. We also made a decision, just like the others, that Corda has to be open source, the base platform. And that's because this software has such big network effects. People fear lock-in, and therefore they need to know the base platform is open source. And we see that the pure commercial proprietary platforms are diminishing. They're not being successful. But we also knew that some people would need enterprise features on top, support for hardware security modules, firewalls to protect them from the internet, support for enterprise databases. So we do have a commercial version of Corda called Corda Enterprise, but the key point is it's completely compatible with and interoperable with the open source version. And we actually see people with networks where some nodes are the free version and some of the commercial version. And for those reasons, the fact that the programming model is nice, you can write in Java, it doesn't leak privacy unnecessarily. I think that's why people are using it. If I just spend a couple of seconds on some of perhaps one or two of the problems with the other platforms. I'm actually a big, I used to work for IBM. I'm a very big fan of IBM, and I think they've done a lot of good work with, not just they, but the whole Hyperledger community with Fabric. But what I've seen with Fabric is it's gone through several significant redesigns. The first privacy model was global broadcast, everybody saw everything. Then it was substantially re-architected to add something called channels that required people to change their applications, and then there have been subsequent changes. So people who've used that have found they've had to change their applications quite a lot. It's been quite disruptive. But that's not intended to be a criticism of that platform, because it does have a lot of strengths, but it has been disruptive for its users. If we look at the Ethereum variants, though, it's a bit more difficult because Ethereum is an amazing achievement as a public blockchain. To have a fully public blockchain with a token operating in the way it does, it's a really remarkable achievement. But Ethereum was not designed to solve problems in business. And when you show it to people in business and they understand that they would have to write applications in Solidity, a language that very few of them understand and which has known security problems, it's hard to justify that to a business. The Enterprise Ethereum Alliance does a lot of its work in private. It's a closed organisation, so not everybody can participate in the development process. It's not fully open. And the long-term roadmap for Ethereum, because the public network has to evolve and move forward, the long-term roadmap has lots of changes. The Ethereum virtual machine gets replaced with something else. A lot of the architecture changes. So when I talk to business people about solving problems with blockchain, when they look at Enterprise Ethereum, what they see is the risk of risk one, it's very hard to find people who can program on it. And number two, the risk that a lot of things will change in the coming years. Of course, it has a lot of strengths. It has a vibrant community. There are pros and cons for each of them. But I think there's some of the big differences.
So, I mean, for me as a former, developer who knows how, that you always need to meet some really crazy, deadlines, right? My biggest complaints with, other solutions, right, is that they kind of try to impose on you a privacy model and a trust model that's not quite right. It's not quite the right fit, right, for the problem that you have to fix or that you need to address, right? So the issue I had with Fabric in the past, right, is that I ended up spending a significant amount of time basically trying to walk around the limitations in the platform itself. I would rather spend that time writing, implementing all the business logic, right? And I see with Corda, you can focus on the business logic. And when it comes to things like privacy, trust models, and things like that, that's something that you can define yourself in the smart contract. You're not constricted by the platform, or the platform does not try to impose on you anything in particular, right? So it gives you more freedom if you know what you're doing, right? And as you said, it actually happened with Fabric, right? Then they had some issues with privacy and the non-functional requirements, right? And that's where they come with the channels, things like that. So honestly, I think Corda has the cleanest architecture, right? And allows you to focus on the business logic, which is where all the value added is, right? So.
But to me, the best part is that if I found something wrong or some problems, you can call Richard.
That was the answer to the question. Who do you ring at 3 in the morning on Saturday? It's my phone that will ring. Yeah.
Okay, the next question I have is that what are the challenges or obstacles to make the DLT blockchain real? I mean, to become the commercially used product.
So I guess there's a few. So the first thing is this is new technology. New technology is like I said earlier. It has that the problem you're solving has to be a really big problem with a really big business case because you have to counteract the risk on the other side. And that's why I think we're seeing some really interesting use cases emerge now as people have discovered those. I think it's fair to say a year, maybe 2 years ago, there were use cases people were exploring on some blockchain platforms that maybe they could have been solved with traditional technology, or perhaps the business cases were not strong enough, and therefore they couldn't get past that barrier to adoption. Whereas we're now seeing some really compelling use cases. I've talked about syndicated lending, ones I see in insurance for complex underwriting in the reinsurance space, or another example where the value that can be unlocked is so high, and you can only do it with things like Corda, otherwise you need a centralized solution. I mean, it's worth doing. The other, probably the main barrier, and it's why R3 exists, it's why I'm so pleased that the SBI R3 entity now exists in Japan, is blockchain is all about collaboration. It requires multiple firms to deploy their solution at once. This is not, you can use it for internal use cases, perhaps between branches, but its real opportunity is to transform or optimize whole markets, the lending market, a trade finance or a supply chain. So multiple firms have to deploy it. So now when you think of the project and program management, that's a lot of separate teams you have to line up. You have to work to a similar project plan. That takes a lot of collaboration and communication. Now, that's been the DNA of R3 since day one. We began as a collaborative consortium. So what we do every day is working with groups of firms. And so we were very lucky that we learned how to do this early in our evolution. But if you get that wrong, or there are too many people with divergent interests, then of course it's hard to get deployed because multiple people do have to move at once. And as I said, as we move from experimentation into production, having a dedicated firm, the SBI R3 JV in Japan, means we now have the skills and leadership in the country as well to make it a reality here.
So my take there is that, end clients, honestly, they only care about working apps, right? They don't really care about what's underneath in many cases, right? But as Richard said, I think core and multi-center technology will allow us to implement, some apps that have been around for a while, but that will feel kind of different to the user because we see things running more efficiently. Then we see the back office jobs or whatever taking minutes instead of days or hours or whatever. So I think they will be able to feel that, right? By the end of the day, you need to come up with a working app, right? So, and I think that's going to be one of the main focuses of this joint venture, I would say, right? But again, adopting a new technology might seem risky, right, to the end users, right? Oh, this is a new thing, right? Oh, is this okay? So it's like, basically takes me back to what I just mentioned before about the governance, right? And the ownership of the dynamic application, right? That's something that, at least personally, I would like to focus on, because I, as the CEO, I also do a lot of sales, right? And I work on my pitch, and I think that's going to be an important part of that, right? Is working apps, and R3 has a really great ecosystem, and not an app store yet, but many, basically within the R3, we are running all these initiatives that actually ended up developing, enterprise application, right? And so that's going to be a big part of that. And then is be able to give confidence to our customers, right? That the right governance is in place, and then we have someone to blame when things break. So that's going to be kind of my job, right? So.
All right. So let me move on to the next topic. That is the last topic before going to Q&A. So the way moving forward, we have Olympic game next year, 2020, and Osaka Expo 2025. And what is your view, or what awaits you in 1 year time frame and in 5 years time frame?
It's a great question. So it was exciting arriving here yesterday because obviously London hosted the Olympics, I guess, almost 10 years ago, 6 years ago now. So I'm guessing you're in this frenzy of trying to get everything ready on time as the clock ticks down. And it feels a bit like that with Corda, as we have just shipped Corda 4, the open source version that adds a lot of new features for application developers. And whilst I'm here, my team are furiously finishing the testing for Corda Enterprise 4, which will ship very soon. For the next year, I think our focus is on, and it sounds boring, but our focus is on really bedding down what we've built so far. So it's about finishing off the key central parts of the platform, and improving the performance, the reliability, and making sure that all the people who are going live are very, very successful. So it felt as if 2018 was all about adding new features and getting Corda to where we needed it to be. 2019 is all about growing up, being mature, making sure that everybody is successful. But then we can turn back to all the other features that we need to add. And there's some really exciting things in the Corda technical white paper that we need to get back on with. So we've talked about encrypting the ledger with SGX, so that far more complicated scenarios, far more use cases can work with no risk at all of any data leakage. We want to move to a model where individuals in a firm can approve transactions, and that's quite difficult to do securely, because when you are asked to approve a transaction, how do you know what it means? What are you approving? How do you know your phone hasn't been hacked? So getting true end user signing of transactions is a big piece of work we have to do. We have to add features that clients in the field are now asking for. So a big one is people want the ability to model accounts. So I could be a bank or a company, I'm transacting on the network, but I'm actually representing all my customers, so they're customers of our customers. How do you manage these accounts? And then another big one, which is in the next year or so, but its impacts will roll out into 2025, is the support for it's top-grade support for tokens. So different types of tokens can be issued on Corda in a way that's compatible, can be linked into exchanges, and is interoperable. So the Corda as a platform for tokens, we think is going to be huge.
So in my case, I like boring too. Yes, I like boring, so I'm really excited about all these new, high availability features that have been, ready to be released, right? But also like to mention that I don't think Corda is a one-size-fits-all solution, right? And it doesn't live in isolation, right? I would like to see Corda integrating with more external systems. You're writing an app for an exchange, you might need to get market data from market data vendors, right? And how do you do that in a proper way that you can validate it on the data source and make sure you're not being maybe something is trying to play with market data to do funny things, right? And it's not only that. Let's say we're talking about many cases, financial applications, right? So that involves money and payments, right? And because you might want to use traditional street networks, you might want to use Ripple, things like that. So that's what I like with things like the Corda settler that you've been working on for the last few months, right? That will allow you to use, the off-chain or off-Corda, right, settlement mechanisms, right? And I think that's something that is important for many potential users, right? So it's good to have that option as a client, right? So I would like to see that ecosystem integration with as many external systems as possible, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, actually, I have one big agenda given by CEO Kitao-san.
Wow.
That some of you already saw it in the IR slide. That Kitao-san asked me to create a new coin platform.
Oh yeah.
Till the Osaka Expo 2025. So that's a frictionless the coin platform, which primarily targeting at the inbound customers coming to Japan who can actually exchange with thin exchange margin, and they can use it in Japanese margins. So that's the goal, not the goal actually, that's what I have to accomplish by the expo. But anyway, well, let me take some questions. As time flies, I can take only maybe 3-4 questions. Okay, please, go ahead.
What were some of the challenges you faced getting started, finding, really from day one, getting off the ground, finding business partners, getting the model right? What were some of the bumps you faced along the way?
So I guess there were two categories of challenges. So the easier one, if you like, was the challenge of building Corda, because in the early days we had to convince our members and our steering committee that it was needed. You have to imagine the conversation in 2015, and I'm going to a collection of senior bankers, as it was, saying, right, all those POCs you've done on Bitcoin and Ethereum and Hyperledger, I'm not convinced that's going to work. We need to invest in building a new platform. And then we have to work really hard to make it one of the top ones, even though we're starting 2 years after everybody else. That was a hard conversation to have. Luckily, it worked out, but it took. We really had to make our arguments. But your question, I think, was a broader one about business as well. And I guess I don't have time to go into the full R3 story, but maybe the one thing to realize about R3, back in the days when we were called R3 CEV, that was our original name, and the C stood for consulting. The original idea was we went to the world's banks and said, you're all doing proofs of concepts on blockchain, but this is obviously about collaboration and market level work. Why don't you work together? But work together with a firm that has hired experts, whether it's industry experts or technologists, that is neutral, is staffed by former bankers, so you know the people, but allow us to help coordinate this activity. Now, because that was a very difficult initiative to get off the ground, but once we did, then in a position where we could help people who are normally competitors, we could help them collaborate. And then the difficulty then, of course, is keeping people along for the ride, because of course you do have lots of very different interests. But we achieved that, then we managed to transition from what was effectively a consulting organisation into what's now a software firm. I guess we'll write a book one day, and that will be the full answer to your question.
質問は日本語でも受け付けますから、もし日本語で質問したい方がいたら、じゃあちょっと先に記者席をちょっと優先させていただいて。
すみません、ありがとうございます。今の日本の銀行とかのシステムと比べて、現状の分だと、銀行さんってどういうふうに考えられているのかなっていうところがすごく気になりますね。例えば営業するときとかにどういうふうにしたら、今のシステムから移行したいと思うのかみたいなところのパタカンナを教えていただけると嬉しいです。
私、
Yeah.
Do you get it? No. The question is that the banks, how banks adopt the blockchain DLT technology. I mean, compared with they actually run the huge system. Well, I don't say that. He said that. So how they adapt this technology. So that is a question in Japanese market specifically.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, in many cases, just starting with the core banking system is not even an option, right? So what I see is banks is focusing on, really particular, back office processes, things like what I just mentioned, KYC. It's kind of a thing that is kind of standalone and that you can, basically redevelop using blockchain technology without impacting the core business, right? And when it comes to things like, again, core banking system or the engine that you use to, to do the calculate credit scores and stuff like that, I think it's going to take a while before banks start even exploring that, right? So the way I see it is that there will be, particular use cases, and there will be some, market participants that will have some really strong solutions for that specific market. And when it comes to trade finance, right, there's a company called TradeIX, right, that focuses on just that particular use case, right? Even if you don't get it right, it's not that the bank is gonna go bankrupt. That's not the case, right? So I think that all the banks have been really cautious, especially here in Japan, right? And they want to start with parts of the system that they kind of isolated and that do not impact the core business, right? I think that's one of the key impacts at this moment. That will change as the technology matures and they see results in other areas, right? But I think we'll get there. But we haven't looked at this yet, so it might take a few. Please.
Hi. So last December, so R3 launched the quota settler with the integration of XRP as the first crypto. Why XRP and why is suitable for enterprise payment and settlement?
Good question. So for those who don't know, Quota Settler is it's an attempt to make it easier to settle payments from Quota applications, even if there is not cash on ledger. So people talk in the future about central bank digital currencies, and they talk about having real money on the ledger. But right now, what we have on enterprise or business blockchains is we have business processes, but money is still in traditional banks or it's on cryptocurrency networks. So what we wanted to show was, let's imagine you've got an insurance contract on Quora and I need to pay you, I'm paying your claim, £10,000 or whatever it is. How do I complete that process and how do I pay you in a way that removes all ambiguity? I pay you and I can prove that I paid you, so then we're done. And you can't claim you didn't receive the payment. I can prove that I've done it. So we came up with a pattern that we call Quota Settler that allows me to say to you, how would you like to be paid? I'd like to be paid in yen or XRP or whatever it is. What proof do I need to give you that I've done it? I then go and pay you, I prove I've done it, and we're done. And that's quite boring. It's really useful, but and it's interesting to me. But I think a lot of people don't get excited by it. And yet, I think it's a really important pattern. So the first version we did, and I think it did excite a lot of people. We said, well, you know what? If we just did it with a traditional bank, maybe it wouldn't be that interesting. So I think we surprised a lot of people. And the first integration we did, that I think really captured people's imagination, was to say, here's how you can settle if the recipient wants to receive XRP. So we showed how Corda could talk to the XRP network, and we did it on the test network, and we showed how you could send that to the other side and prove that you've done it. We've since subsequently started work on a second integration to Swift's GPI. So now we have an example of doing it with a modern cryptocurrency network and also with a traditional banking rail. So and it's open source, so anybody can add any other ones. But I agree. Are there, were there specific examples of people then who wanted payment in that way? It was mainly for me at least, it was to prove the concept.
Please, Brian. Thank you. I had a question. You talked about the application of the ledger. You gave some really great examples of. You previously gave some great examples of syndicate lending, insurance, land titles, maybe in certain countries. I was wondering, since SBI is here in Japan, what's the killer area that you might be targeting? Certainly, you're open to everybody, but they also have to then write, as I understand it, an application on top of your ledger to make something run. I'm sure you're going to take anybody as a customer, I'm sure, but there must be some burning industry that you think would be great for this.
So I would think, at least in all the projects that I'm involved with.
Maybe Carl is the best person to answer.
Okay, we can take the call here.
He's the head of APEC.
Carl, you want to join?
What's the killer app? I mean, the things that we've seen that really fit, that they're getting the most solutions being built on it, are trade finance and insurance, right? And obviously trade finance, there's a lot of trade finance going on here in Japan, so obviously that's one that some of the banks have already been working on. SMBC announced a pilot on Marco Polo about a month ago. So again, testing to see how it would work and work with Japanese corporates and Japanese banks. So trade finance is probably the first one that we really see a lot of traction. Insurance, and then KYC.
Thank you.
Okay, so we slightly switched the schedule, but we have beers. But before going to the party, I'd like to say special thank you to Mr. Norbert Gelges. Sorry, I'm not good at the German accent. So, he's the head of the General Incorporated Association of the Tokyo FinTech. So thank you very much for your co-sponsor. I also want to say thank you for Goodway as a media partner who actually helped us gathering this fantastic crowd. Thank you very much.